Hello everyone! Today we will be talking about UI in video games and how I did it in my video game. So first of all, have you ever wondered why does UI in some games feel confusing and in other games it feels natural? Or how do developers make 2D interfaces in VR? Or maybe you heard UI and UX and you don't know what they mean. Well, in this video I'm going to explain all that. So up first, what's the difference between UI and UX? UX is an abbreviation for user experience and it works really close with UI, which stands for user interface. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to be putting both of them under the same roof of UI. Now let's define what UI does. UI does two things: give the player information about the game and let the player interact with the game with the use of buttons, sliders, menus, etc. When you design a UI, you have a bunch of ways to tell the player what is happening on screen: color, shape, text, animation, and sound. The key here is combining these 5 ways of communication into something that not only looks good, but is also consistent. For example, if something like a button is not available, you can gray it out. But then if something else, like an ability, is also not available, then it's also supposed to be grayed out. Same thing with animation and shape. The text here is an outlier because, well, it's text, which means that you can read it. When text is being placed somewhere, it's important that it's as short as possible, unless you need it otherwise. For example, if you use text to portray a story. Also important when placing text is to give it some space. The fact that it fits perfectly with English doesn't mean that it will fit in another language. Sometimes you can also replace text with a little thing called skeuomorphism. Basically what it is when you take a real-world object and its function and put it in instead of text. For example, a recycling bin instead of a delete button. Next up is the intuitiveness of UI and how to not make it feel clunky. Here we come across a big factor. The more UI, the clunkier will it feel. The clunky feeling can be fixed by the clear communication mentioned above, but if your UI consists of menus stacked on top of menus stacked on top of menus, then it's unavoidable. So if you can, keep the UI as simple as possible. Next up is UI in VR. But before that, we need to talk about UI in 3D space. And as a good example of how it should be done is how StarCraft 2 did it, specifically in its campaign. Basically, what Blizzard did is they made UI 3D by fixing the player's camera inside of a room, taking a piece of decoration like a table or a screen and turning that into an interactable button that the player could click on. And 12-year-old me thought that this looked so cool. That's called diegetic UI. Its purpose is to live inside the world and be a part of the said world. There's also non-diegetic UI, and it's used when information has to be conveyed as quickly and clearly as possible while not being in the way. Just look at any competitive video game like CS2 or the again mentioned StarCraft 2 and you'll find it. In my opinion, diegetic UI is the way for VR titles, because the developers don't have a choice anyway, since you can't glue buttons to someone's face. UI elements are going to be suspended in 3D space, and if the devs do that, they might as well make the UI feel like it's a part of the game and not just an interface. When I was working on the UI for our game, I thought the same, and here is the way that I did it. As of right now, our game has 3 scenes: the main menu room, the lobby, and the gameplay scene. First, we will talk about the main menu room. The goal for this scene was just the ease of access and a proof of concept. So what I did is basically take a small room, put a little bit of decoration and slap UI on it in a way that made sense. Compared to making UI just suspended in the air, it only took some extra time for making the room's 3D model and placing the UI elements around. The lobby, on the other hand, is not even in a prototype stage yet. The plan there is pretty similar, but with slight differences. Here the goal was to create a believable space in which all the players come together to decide on what they want to do and how. Here they spawn in the same room as the main menu room, except the door outside is open, revealing a large hangar with spaceships standing around. The only paths that are available here is the spaceship, about which we will talk later, and the club, about which we will talk now. The club is supposed to be a place where the players get their mission and their upgrades, which is done in the form of VI that is displayed on an in-game screen. After choosing their mission and upgrades, the only place they can go is their spaceship, which will be a small environment that serves as a loading screen between the lobby scene and the gameplay scene. In the gameplay scene, the goal was also to make the UI as available as possible, but the HUD here is not really a possibility, so I had to come up with something a little more creative. So I decided to make a small tablet that will be on the player's toolbar, kinda like the PDA in the first Subnautica, except more VR compatible. There's a lot more to talk about here, like UI juiciness and sound design, but I think that both of these topics deserve a separate video. There's also the technical aspect of UI implementation, like how to make UI react to it being physically touched in VR like a real button. Or what's better, physical interaction, array to interact with, or button combination on the controllers. But I think that's kinda boring and really depends on the project that you are creating. So for now, this is goodbye. See you next time!